What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Surf and Sales podcast. We have been busy of late. I don't even know how many episodes we've done this week, but it's been a lot, and we're excited to keep it rolling. My name is Scott Leese, one half of the Surf and Sales Summit and Surf and Sales podcast duo, here with my good friend and buddy and partner and co-founder and all the good things, Richard Harris. How's it going, sir? How are you doing this morning?
I'm good, man. I'm good. This is the way you and I get to communicate, is like having this podcast. So it's our second or third conversation this week, which is, always fun in most cases. So I'm glad to see you, my friend. Glad to see you. And
you've hit your quota. You've hit your quota for the week.
Right. No, and I'm excited. We're going to finally get to hang out. I haven't seen you in a while. So, November 15th to 19th, we're in Costa Rica. And yes, we're saying that out loud to create some FOMO for everybody who keeps putting surf and sales on their bucket list. Fucking stop it. Just come. Like, seriously, stop being ridiculous. All right.
I appreciate it being on people's bucket list, but I appreciate people coming more.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the fact that everybody says it's been on my bucket list for 3 years. I'm like, well, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
think about what else is on their bucket list.
Right. What's more important than me and you? I mean, seriously.
It's a good point.
Good surfing forecast, perhaps. Yeah.
It's Costa Rica.
It's always good all year long.
Who let the peanut gallery in?
Yeah, that magical voice you just heard in the background chiming in right there is our guest today, Patrick Monnot. I think I said that right. CEO and founder of Pod. And we're going to get to him in just a second. But first, we got to talk about the people who help us put this fantastic show together. One of whom is Tech Sales Accelerator. That's techsalesaccelerator.com. Great place to launch your six-figure tech sales career in 2024 and beyond without prior experience or a college degree. And the other one is Richard's pals over at Peel. Go for it, Richard.
Yeah, it's at getpeel.ai. Finally leveraging, conversational AI. It helps you meet your buyers where they really are, which I think is a really important piece. Like, timing is probably going to be the most critical thing in sales moving forward. And so understanding where your customers are is, in the moment is very, very important. And it doesn't mean you can't go after them, try and create some urgency if you know how to do it, using neat selling, shameless plug. But be sure to check out our good friends, getpeel.ai, to figure that out and help you figure it out and engage with your prospects in the right way and the right mindset. So, and now, Scott, back to you in the studio.
Well done. Good, smooth transition. Patrick, welcome to the show, man. Tell everybody a little bit about what Pod is and what problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, super psyched to be talking to you guys. Excited for the conversation. As Scott, you mentioned, I'm the founder and the CEO of Pod. Pod, we're a pipeline intelligence platform for B2B sellers. What we do is pretty simple. I've been in go-to-market pretty much my whole career. I've worked alongside AEs, and one of the things that consistently came up is that we saw a lot of account executives making mistakes managing their pipeline and prioritizing the right deals, and not meeting their quota, and ultimately they lack the coaching and the guidance to be able to know how to push deals forward. So what we're doing at Pod pretty simplistically is to help them and give them guidance on managing their pipeline smarter. So we tell them which deals to prioritize and the best actions they can take to close deals faster. It's that simple. It's like a pipeline coach, so to speak. It's like having Scott and Richard by their side day in and day out. So it's been super fun working, talking to salespeople, talking to people have been in sales their whole career, and
it's like having Richard and I there, except a lot cheaper, probably.
Yes, probably.
So exactly.
I got a quick question just for people who are interested, because I know this is a big topic. Pod is such a good name. What is the website though? Because you could do Pod AI, Pod if someone's interested, we at least want them to go to the place and find you.
Absolutely. It's pretty simple. Workwithpod.com, WORK with pod.com.
That's cool.
Check us out and reach
out. All right.
Yeah. Cool. So you mentioned the word guidance and coaching multiple times in that little spiel. And I'm for anybody not watching the show on YouTube or only listening and not seeing the video, Patrick is in an office right now, which is a little bit of a wild concept in and of itself. But even more wild is the glass windows or whatever behind him. I can see people in his office back there working. So I
Mind blowing.
assume I assume that you are somebody who believes that guidance and coaching and whatnot, more stuff gets done in an in-office versus remote environment, at least part of the time. So
Yeah.
give us your thoughts on what are the benefits right now of you having that team in office with you there behind you.
I think it comes down to being able to look at people straight in the eyes and shoot the shit and tackle tough problems and align together much more easily than via, Slack huddles or 30-minute conversations left and right. I think as a startup founder, something I'm trying to be very deliberate about is culture. And, coaching is a big part of what makes a successful company, whether it's a sales organization or a startup. So being able to, just you have a problem, you don't wait 2 days to find a solution. You turn around, tap on the shoulder of your colleague or your boss or whatnot, and you just talk about it and get to resolution quickly. I think that's a key benefit for me to just having the team in person. And, I have to say, I started Pod being 100% remote and decided to come, back to Canada and have the team all together. So I think that's an important part, being able to have that in person, but also just have fun as well. And you don't have as much fun on Zoom as you have playing ping pong over
Was
lunch
there
or
was there this is, feel free to brush this question off, but like,
yeah.
was there performance issues that pulled you to kind of want to move people back into the office, or was it really just like, you know, all
No,
this other stuff
yeah.
that you're talking about? And are they there every day of the week? Is this a 5 day a week thing?
So we have a hybrid model. I'm a big believer in hybrid. It's like 2, 3 days a week in person, 2, 3 days a week, depending on the week. Sometimes we want to be more in person, sometimes less. But it wasn't performance at all. I think to me it was a matter of seeing the previously being in person pre-pandemic, I guess, seeing our ability to move quickly as a team and execute faster being in person versus being kind of remote. I just felt like that was just a decision I needed to make to ensure to some extent the success of Pod. So I think it's more of realizing the untapped potential than the team not doing a good job being remote. Like they weren't quite quitting, they weren't, not being transparent, but it was like we can do so much more if we just meet half of the time in person in the office. So, yeah, as a founder, you have to put every chance on your side. And I think in addition to this being like I said, significantly more fun than being behind the desk all day, every day. And I think it works in many cases, but I think for me personally, I want to be excited to get to work and see colleagues and talk about last night's game and talk about technology and things that don't relate to Pod as well, which ultimately leads to a better outcome for Pod and our product and our go to market.
Cool. So couple of questions. First
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
because you built remote first, right? Did you have people in other parts of the country, or were you lucky enough that they were all in the same thing? And how did that transition go?
Yeah, it was initially we were leveraging a lot of contractors, so working with offshore teams like that, folks in India, some folks in Europe. We had our first founding engineer in Montreal, and that kind of planted the seed. And then, with our latest round of funding, we decided to then get rid of the contractors and then build a core in Montreal. So the
So
transition was also quite smooth from that perspective.
did you, since you, if everybody was a contractor, were there any people who were already in Montreal who were like, I'm not coming to the office? Like, and
Oh,
did you try to separate, you know, as gently as possible, or did they finally come around? Like, these are the things I think founders think about, right? Like,
yeah.
and navigating. I'm curious how you navigated that, if that was an issue for you.
It wasn't really an issue, especially for the folks that were in Montreal. But I think I said the expectation quite clearly from the beginning. If it's quite vague and you're not clear about what you expect, I think people might default back to staying always at home. But at some point, like we went from, hey, you can, come any 2 or 3 days of the week in the office. And then eventually I was like, well, we are all going to come to the office on Monday and Wednesday and another day. Right. And I think that kind of forced people. I think people were excited about that to some extent and found routine into it and weren't really pushing back. At times it happened, but not in a systematic way.
Did you lose people, or have you lost people because of this?
Not because of that,
Okay.
no. But
Okay.
because I think because of the way I hire people, because I'm upfront about it as well. In that matter, I talk about it, and if they're like, I want to be remote 100% of the time, and obviously I'm talking about the new people who joined us, it's just
Right.
it's just not a good fit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. So, where did the idea for Pod even come? How did you get that entrepreneurial spirit for this thing?
The entrepreneurial spirit is way back. So I'll give a brief overview, but I have an engineering background. I've always wanted to build my own company. I had a few entrepreneurial gigs left and right, nothing kind of big. And I've thought about my whole career.
You're way too cool to be an engineer by trade.
Yeah,
Scott, you're not the typical mold from that I usually see.
That's how he's moved so seamlesly into being a founder.
Right. He's done a good job. Take note, people.
Yeah.
So went for engineering, and then I don't want to say architected my career in a way to get more and more experience, knowledge, and credibility around building and or operating companies. I did consulting for quite some time, operated an early stage startup, and then after 6-7 years, I was like, okay, well, I feel like more confident than ever to kind of start my own thing and have a real shot at it, so to speak. And then over most of my career, I worked with go-to-market teams. Initially in consulting, more with the leadership team, and then eventually worked doing go-to-market ops, worked with AEs. And this is where it was my first time working with, enterprise account executive. And my first reaction, like, what the hell is going on here? This is nothing like any other functions I've worked with. The people, the process, the approach, the decision-making, like there's something out of the ordinary here. I kind of fell in love with, the balance of not to be too cheesy, but the art and the science of sales. And ultimately, the problem that I saw is I was working with an account executive at some point. His calendar was completely empty. And I was like, what? Like, what are you doing? Right? Like, are you on calls? What's happening, et cetera? Until I realized that person was spending most of their day trying to figure out which deal to go after, and then doing a bunch of admin work, and then, not really getting any coaching. And I was like, there's something here. It feels like, and then I dig more into it, saw a bunch of like great content, talked to, other sales and RevOps professional. And I was like, okay, well, there's a real problem, not just of efficiency, but of effectiveness. And I think that's the problem we're going after. The fact that, and I think, Richard, I came across a post of yours recently, I think that said that, is the fact that people are over-indexing on filling up the pipeline and prospecting, but not spending enough time thinking about improving conversion in the funnel. And to me, that's the problem we're going after. Like, we're not using AI to write a bunch of emails or synthesize calls, and they have their value separately. But ultimately, the one thing that matters in sales is closing business, right? The great thing about sales, it's simple. So let's focus on improving the quality of selling, not just the quantity of selling. And this is why what we do day in and day out.
Yeah, everybody's focused on the top of the funnel. It's
Ridiculous.
almost refreshing to hear somebody working on a problem not at the top of the funnel.
We're building an AI SDR, guys. No, just kidding. We're not doing that.
I don't think it's either or. You got to do both.
Yeah,
but stop focusing on the top like as the only thing. Like, there's never one solution to any problem.
I was always excited about seeing sales leaders saying, hey, I'm focusing 100% of my time just getting leads, qualifying leads. And then when you dig a bit under the surface, you're like, they drop these leads on the laps of AEs, and they're like, best of luck. Good luck out there, and let's talk when it's closed. So I feel like there's so much effort and thought and processes and money and resources and time around like the bottom of the funnel and then forecasting. And then there's this big empty thing in the middle, which I like to call pipeline management, for lack of a better word, which kind of gets not no love, but less love.
I heard you talk about your former life as a consultant a couple times there, and now you're a founder, obviously. How do you think about when is the right time to engage a consultant? Why to engage them? how to pick which one to engage, because you've been on both sides of the table. So I think maybe you have a unique perspective that other people don't on this.
Yeah, I think consultants can. So I worked in strategy consulting, which there are different types of consulting. Sometimes it can be, RevOps consulting, very tactical and operational, so to speak. There's strategy consulting. I worked a bit initially more in strategy consulting, but I see
Strategy consulting is code, Richard, just so you know, for like, we talk about stuff,
Bullshit.
but we don't do anything
Right.
specifically.
I did as well. I started exactly in that category. Cost cutting, optimization, and then moved into startups, and I did stuff.
Scott and I, our inside joke is that we're really good at helping people sell technology. There's a lot of technology we wouldn't know how to actually use, right?
Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. So the way I think about it is one of two things: either use consultants or to augment your team, because you need to have the flexibility of bringing people that already have knowledge to come in, and in 2 days they're up and running because they've done that specific part of your workflow 70 times. And that's kind of a point in time kind of need. I think strategy consulting becomes significantly more relevant when you're a bigger organization and you basically need someone, for lack of a better word, read your watch for you, tell you the time on your own risk. And it's a matter of like taking information that exists in your organization, synthesizing it, and then structuring it, and then giving you a recommendation that you can, so like helping you think about making decisions. And I think that's typically where I see interest. I've been in and I've seen interesting projects succeed, where like there's chaos from a decision-making perspective and big companies. And you bring in consultants, yes, they're expensive, but in a matter of a few weeks, you get the action. So, and then those two use cases, very different. Depends on the company, depends on your needs, depends on your hiring, your folks. There's a lot of different variables, but those are the two examples where I think it makes a lot.
How are you choosing which consultant or which group to work with?
If I knew I'd be a rich man, Scott. No, but seriously, I think you have to spend the time talking to them. You have to spend the time understanding, again, depending on the project, what they would tactically do. In the consulting space, there's too many, I don't want to say con men and con women, but they talk big game and they're good at it.
He said it. I all I heard was con men and con women. Yeah. He said it.
Yeah, it's also known as go-to-market strategist and fractional CFO, CEO, CMO. Just someone call me. How do you vet that out, though? A fractional Richard Harris. Someone should just be my fractional.
Yeah, I like that. But how do you vet that out? Because I think this is not. I'm not trying to pick on you, but there's a lot of people that say stuff like, beware of the con men or con women. Or
for sure.
Beware of the people that are not legit or not. But like.
But how do you test it?
How do you test it? How do you test it?
Well, I think you need to, it's about, I think, proving track record to some extent, like being able to either talk to former clients of theirs or see if they've been in previous organizations that have been successful, because, having an opinion is easy. Being able to execute on it is another thing. It's a different set of skill set. That's one thing. And then afterwards, because every company and every project is different, I think it comes down to spending enough time talking to them and getting tactical. Like, not just like, what is your take on how to improve my conversion, but like, what are you actually going to do in the first 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, whatever, to make this happen? And I judge people a lot more on what, how they're going to execute, how they, the way that they think about execution for our problems, than I do, I do care about their track record. Cause like, if they just take a template and then slap it in your face, I'm like, okay, you're not listening to what I need. And I don't care as much if they make mistakes, as long as they're, along with me thinking through it. And I think that's the best part of a relationship versus expecting them to come in and, never talk to them, never give them any information and expect them to execute. They're, professional in the end. They're not robots, but they don't have the answer all the time.
Yeah. Scott, I got a question for you around this, right? Because I get this question a lot, and I'm curious to you, and obviously, Patrick, curious to your answer.
Yeah.
One of the questions I get is, when I'm in a competitive situation, will you come in and do an assessment of my sales team? Do you get that question, Scott?
I don't really get it. I don't get it phrased that way, but I think I know where you're going. So yes, let's just say I do. Mine's
All
not
right.
exactly phrased like that, but close enough. Yeah.
What would your answer be?
My answer is sure. I'm
Interesting.
happy to. That
Richard, what is
probably,
your
I'd
answer?
say
I feel like the different one.
probably 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Well, hold it.
But
Caveat when they say come in, if they mean in office,
no, 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 no,
my
no,
answer
no,
is
no,
no. But if they
no, no,
just mean
no.
like have a conversation or whatever, 90% of the time I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm happy to chat, learn more about what's going on, see if I can be
Yeah.
helpful to you. Yeah.
Right. Right. So because my
And
answer
yours?
is, yeah, my answer is, but I'm also more of a trainer. I think, you know, I run into that more than you do. But my answer is the mere fact that you're asking me tells me you're just going to pay me a lot of money to tell you what we already both know. You know, so I can do it, but you know, where it comes up for me is, do you have a test that makes that you can measure somebody on their assessment of their sales skills? And I'm like, dude, like that's such a waste of time. Go talk to somebody who wants to do that, and they're going to charge you 50 grand for it, right? And then
Because your
they're going to
assumption
give you the
is
same answer that I'm going to give you right now. So
because your assumption is the reason they're asking you in is because they already know their sales stuff is busted in some way.
yeah,
So
yeah,
they're looking for confirmation. They're not looking for
right,
advice.
right.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm leaving money on the table. Maybe I need to reevaluate and sort of look at doing that. But
I don't
I
know. Another
also,
way to look at it is maybe you have more free time than I do.
yeah. So, well, that's a whole other. That's a Scott
That's fair.
issue. That's not a
That's
Richard issue. That's a.
What is
We're gonna we're gonna
what is
talk,
Pat
Scott. That's
what
going
is
to be a
Patrick's
topic.
response?
Hold on,
Well,
before you
what is
respond.
Patrick's response? Because
No, no,
Patrick's
no.
now in a position where he maybe is the one
Yeah.
sending those questions out to
Yeah.
people like us.
So, Scott, we're going to make this one of the
Um,
topics at Surf and Sales. By the way, why does
All
Scott
right.
Leese not have enough time? That'll be one of our sessions.
Yeah, we're gonna 90 minutes
5
on
years of
breaking
problem
down my life.
solving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do I think? I think that as long as you scope that whatever assessment properly, I would say yes, because it'll help you to know if you can be helpful
I
as a
mean,
consultant or not.
okay, that's you with your consultant hat on.
Yeah,
Now I
I
want
hate
you to
that word.
put your CEO hat back on. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
So if I ask the question, what I
CEOs
expect.
like you would be sending
Yeah.
those messages to people like us.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
That's fair.
So
I'm
when you're sending that message, what are
Yeah.
you thinking? What are you hoping the response is? What is your expectation?
Well, the reason why I would send a response like that is that I want to make sure that they know what they're talking about and that they have kind of some sort of informed perspective. I agree, Richard, with your point that like I think if I ask that question, I'm talking to you guys for a reason. Like I know that something's off, but I need to understand why and what to do about it. That's why I bring someone else. So like I'm looking for some additional validation of like, hey, you know, how are you going to help me? It's more of a question of like, how are you going to help me to fix this? Than is there a problem? And can you tell me like what's your take on what's going on? Or else, like, why would I ask someone to come in and give me an assessment of something I think is perfect already? So maybe that's not just if I do that, like when I do that, I think it's mostly to get a bit more granularity in. It's not free work, but like I need to validate that I'm not talking to, you know, someone that is gonna, engage myself into a long process with someone that doesn't have a perspective on what we do or can get to a perspective quickly. That's my take. On the other side of the table, I guess.
So
how does that feel?
How does that sit with you?
That's the
How does
question.
that sit with you, Richard? How does that sit with you? He's being honest. He's being honest.
No, no, no. I appreciate it. And, Scott, you know me well enough to know that I get so tactical that oftentimes I jump to the tactic or the solution rather than absorbing, right? And to a certain degree for what I do and the amount of work I think it would take for me to go in and do assessments and run these tests, like that just feels exhausting to me. As opposed to my training method and methodology of which I already know they really want. So in my opinion, it's like, I'll do it, but it's going to cost you and it's still not going to get a different answer than what you're going to get today, which is, I bet these are your problems. Right.
I think it's
but
a bit different.
That being
your
said,
point,
though,
Richard, in your case, because it's training. I think if training is a bit different than saying like, hey, I don't know, I don't have enough MQLs There's not a playbook of how to
Right.
do that. You need to come in
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I do think though that understanding the why behind it that Patrick explained would be more valuable to me. Right. And I could probably still what I want to say if I slowed my roll for a second, ask one or more two questions, right? Like, look, we're all in sales. We can get better at this. Ask one or two more questions, still say what I want to say. And that would probably help build trust for someone like Patrick if they were looking at me that Richard heard what I had to say. And he suggested that if I really want to go here, but if this is really my problem, it's probably not necessary. So,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
is that,
I agree with that.
the
I
right answer?
think I judge people on the type of questions that they ask more than on their answers, because I think it gives a bit of sheds a bit of light on the way that they think.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
that's what I think consultants have to bring to the table, is like a way to
Yes.
think about a
Well, it's
problem, and
funny.
then, yes, execute on it. But
Yeah. So I'm a lot like you, Patrick. I judge people on the questions they ask, and they often ask me just stupid questions. So
give us top three most stupid questions that you get.
This is great.
Do
We
I
just flipped it.
do I have a
Top three
problem?
most stupid questions that Richard gets. Go, Richard, go.
let's see. One is the assessment question. Two is the question of, well, what skin in the game are you going to put in to guarantee this works? Right. Which I have an answer for, but it's more about I already know the question behind that question, but I've had a couple people say, well, will you trade this off for equity? And I'm like, no, because I've got a certain level of reinforcement, but after I leave, if you guys fuck this up, like, why would I do that? Right. And then the other stupid question I get is always trying to negotiate price for a difference of somewhere between $1,500 and $3,500. And I'm just like, we're already down this far down the pipeline. Are you really going to step back and go nickel and dime with somebody else and now go spend 3 more weeks of time with 8 other people of your team over $3,500? Like,
oh man,
I mean, if you want to do that, go ahead, but I'm here when you get to the same
answer. on that note, Richard, I would like to share a story that I got red lines back on a contract today.
Please.
Because there was some capitalization issues in the language in the contract. So I politely wrote them back and said, nice work paying your legal team thousands of dollars to correct my capitalization error on these 2 sentences. Good job.
Right.
That's the type
Did
of
you really send that?
Worth the back and forth.
I 100% sent that. Yes. Literally sent it. To be determined if the contract comes back signed. But I sent that. I couldn't hold back. I couldn't handle it.
That, which is impressive because Scott usually holds back. That's usually a Richard response. Like people typically think, Patrick, that, we say, well, what, they think that, Scott's kind of the jerk and I'm the nice guy. And in reality, Scott is much nicer than I am. Yeah. And I'm like,
people get it backwards.
Right up off the cuff.
I want to pivot the conversation for a second. You have raised VC money, correct, Patrick?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what the number one complaint is amongst VPs of sales, CROs, and head of sales right now, presently? It's an open question. Do you know what the number one complaint is?
Let me take a guess, because we've had a few conversations already. Is it unexpected expectations from the board of directors in terms of sales goals that are unrealistic? Is that perhaps it? Close enough?
Yes. Okay. Close enough. Unrealistic sales goals, right? Yeah. And so the perception is, whether it's true or false is debatable, but the perception is, you've gone and raised money, and therefore you've committed to the VCs, like you're going to go from X to X times 5,000, by tomorrow, whatever. Right. So can you talk a little bit about how you believe founders and sales leaders and CFO, for that matter, and the VCs perhaps, can have a better relationship and better communication and mutual kind of agreement and buy-in in terms of revenue goal setting? How can you be a part of the solution as a founder who's raised money, who's in this exact spot?
Yeah. I
Right now, he's judging me because of the type of question I asked. If you heard him,
Totally.
I don't know. I think it's a great question. It's a very nuanced question. So I'm not going to ask like I have the absolute solution to it. My approach to this,
And by the way,
uh,
answer as a founder, not as a consultant, right?
and
Because
so, yeah,
Scott's not
exactly.
going to
That's
let
okay.
you get
I'll
away
put
with
it
that.
at the right. Exactly. Well, that's a very founder question. I don't think there's a lot of people that can answer that question unless you are the one dealing on the board. So, uh, I think to me, it comes from the nature of the relationship with your board of directors and the type of not pace, but expectation that you set. Not expectation, the type of culture that you set, right? I think understanding where investors come from, they're financiers, they have to make a return. They're very smart people that think about things in a very qualitative way. That's their role. That's kind of they stretch the elastic in that way. And then as a founder, as an operator, you stretch the elastic in the other way. And I think the objective is to find a middle ground, which kind of makes sense for your shareholders, but also makes sense tactically when it comes to the executing on it. So what it comes down to me is like how transparent and clear and honest can you be with your investors? And I think there, depending on your, it comes down ultimately to choosing the right investors for you. Like you can choose big name investors and it's fun. And at times it's not, it comes down to the specific partner versus the firm, but some of them can be very, very pushy, right? And like not really care about your perspective and say like, you have to be there at that time. I'm lucky enough to have incredible investors that don't just set expectation and leave, but are actually involved in like us thinking through the operational challenges to get there. And given where we are, it's not just about revenue; it's about product market fit and getting engagement, et cetera, et cetera. So the nature of these conversations also evolve. And if you're if we talk again in 2-3 years and we're a Series B and we have other investors, maybe the dynamic's going to be a bit different. But it comes down to like, are you getting along with your investors and getting along not just in a way of friendly folks, but do you have a shared vision of what good looks like? And I think I'll give our specific example. When we collaborated with the folks at Drive Capital, the first conversation Andy and I had was, okay, what, to get to the next round in the next 2 years, not in the next quarter, not in the next 6 months, but like in 2-3 years, what does that need to look like in order for us to be successful? And like aligning on that and both not just talking about, hey, it has to be revenue, but it has to be like, okay, well, how do you prove that the product is bringing value and has traction and have engagement and activation, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it comes down to that. The rest is, it's pure professional dynamics of agreeing and disagreeing on certain topics, revenue goals being one of them. But if it's a one-sided, out of balance dynamic, then you set yourself to be, put in a corner or forced to get goals to reach goals that are unrealistic and then not meeting them and then firing a bunch of folks. And that's my take. Maybe it's a too naive human answer to that question, but I think board of directors and investors, it's purely, about human to human relationship and solving problems in the context of company. So I think maybe
That felt like a consultant answer to me.
What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's the way I phrase it, Richard.
Yeah.
No, but I mean,
I guess I should be saying, why do you really think that, Patrick? So you're going to judge me on my question. So why do you think that, Patrick? I'm trying to learn from our previous no. I got a different question for you.
Oh, he's moving on. He
decided
he lost that argument.
No, it's a better question. This is a Scott kind of question, by the way, and it's related to that. So you've raised a certain amount of funding.
Myself.
You've committed to certain number of revenue goals. You hire a guy like Scott's Leese, not as a consultant, but to come in and be a VP of sales.
Yeah.
And I know Scott, and he would say this. He's like, well, I can't sign up for that number. I never committed to that.
I definitely would. That would be one of my interview questions for Patrick.
Absolutely. So now, which goes back to what the original question Scott asked and the answer you gave.
Yeah.
Not is what is your opinion of someone who does that? Yeah. My question is, what is your opinion of that concept or thought around as you bring in new salespeople, goals have been committed to that may have been, I wouldn't say coerced, but agreed to without a certain level of reality. right? Scott asked that question because he's like, well, give me reality before I commit to a goal.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm curious to your thought around that.
So what's my take on like a VP of sales coming in and like pushing back on these goals? I guess my reaction to that would at first try to understand like the why, like why is it unrealistic? Because I to some extent, obviously, depending on the dynamic, if we agree to it, we think that in some way it's possible to get there. If someone comes in and is like, oh, it's impossible. Well, I think it is also my duty to say like, okay, well, why is it impossible? And like maybe the underlying hypotheses are the wrong ones, or maybe I'm wrong and maybe the board is wrong. And then, getting to, you're bringing a VP of sales that has experience in sales, right? So you want to trust their experience and their knowledge to be able to say whether a goal is realistic or not. But you want to understand, I think, get 2 or 3 levels deeper and say like, okay, well, why do you think that's the case? And then if it turns out that they're right, well, then you either go back to the board and say, hey, for these reasons, that's why I don't think it makes sense, or you change a bit of the plan. And you're like, well, maybe we're going to bring one VP of sales in and add 2 AEs, but maybe to meet the goal, we need to add 1 VP of sales and 5 AEs. So maybe I'm not against it, because the reaction to me in and of itself is not a problem. It's what are the underlying reason why why that person is reacting that way or kind of pushing back. Because ultimately that's the only objective thing that would, that's the only objective way that you can run a business, right? Or else it's just feelings. And then feelings are, nothing. You don't run a business out of just feelings, out of numbers, plans.
You're very, like I said earlier, you're a very different type of engineering backgrounded founder. You have much more rational sense. So you have a little more wisdom.
Engineers are very rational as well. Just a different part of them. I've had a chance to be on both sides. Yeah, engineers and business. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, fair enough. Man. Fair enough.
So we got to start moving.
Sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just gonna say we have to start moving towards the end of the show. Unfortunately, start trying to get wrapped up. I want to shout out our sponsors one more time, and then give Patrick an opportunity to ask us a question or two if we can sneak it in and see if we can be helpful to him. So I want to give techsalesaccelerator.com another shout out. Tech Sales Accelerator has got a collection of courses that deliver a complete blueprint for landing an entry-level sales role like an SDR gig or a full cycle AE gig at a tech company you love. Help you get your first promotion to AE and become a consistent 6-figure earner. Check it out at techsalesaccelerator.com. Richard.
Yeah. So this is really cool. Like, for Peel at getpeel.ai, if you're ever interested in it, like Brandon is one of the only sponsor I've ever known in any podcast I've listened to who's giving out his email address. So it's Brannon, BRANNON at getpeel.ai. They are leading the market in a different way of doing conversational intelligence to help support your entire revenue team meet your customers and prospects in their head, in their mindset, based on the right time. So please be sure to check out getpeel.ai or email Brandon directly and tell him you heard us on Surf and Sales, because that always helps that they know it worked.
It usually also amounts to like a 96% discount for people in whatever the products are.
Right.
Yeah, if you mention us. Yeah. Yeah. And Patrick will probably honor that too. For
right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any credible. Yeah, exactly. For any team,
he's like,
for sure.
Absolutely not.
Well, how can we be helpful to you, man? You got any questions for us?
One question I was curious to hear your thoughts on, and I think Richard, this one is going to probably hit home because it talks about frameworks. So we've been, and the NEAT framework being one of different frameworks that are out there.
You're famous. Working on. Did you realize that? You're famous,
dude. I was famous long before that. If you ask my mother, like according to my mom, who's visiting this week,
the most famous man in town. So to me, we've worked on a feature recently where you take a framework which has different topics, and then you consolidate all the different touch points on a client. So call, transcript, emails, notes, etc. And basically identify on a specific deal, is the rep hitting all the different topics, and then being able to see in a synthesized way, what are they talking about? Call it kind of framework analysis, so to speak.
Sure.
So there's a big difference for me, and the reason why that is that the reason why we came with that feature, so to speak, on Pod is the difference between a nice, logical, theoretical framework that makes a lot of sense and a framework that you can actually that you can action on. They can implement into your processes in a way that is helpful, not for management, but for reps.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your guys' take on how do you go from a theoretical framework that makes a lot of sense to something that gets helpful at the ground level to help you close deals, close them faster, close them more often?
Well, I will tell you that's the entire theme of my book, The Seller's Journey at Amazon.com. But
available in Kindle.
Right, available in Kindle, and the audiobook is recently released. But for me, I try not to get too caught up into that word of framework, scripts, those kind of things. They do exist, right? It's around the process. Yeah. It's also around, if I'm going to develop a framework, I need to know the exit criteria from one stage to the next. I need to know what is the minimum viable information I need to have before I can say this deal is now going from a qualifying stage to a deeper discovery stage, or from a discovery stage to a selection stage, right? And so I need to have that exit criteria. And I also have to be rational enough to know that the exit criteria may not fall within the actual stage I've put it, right? Like the conversation is a bit like jazz, right? But I need to capture it in certain places. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, at the tactical level, which is all about the second half of my book, available on Amazon. Got so excited about it. Right. There's a difference, I don't mind using the word script. There's a huge difference between using a script word for word and sounding scripted. I don't mind people using a script. I encourage them. In time, they can find their authentic voice. And, for example, this is a script, but it's a one-sentence script. Hey, Patrick, I know when we get off this call, you're going to go take this back to your team. Just out of curiosity, who's the most skeptical person on the team, and what are they generally skeptical about? Because I could give two shits who the decision maker is. I'm not getting to a decision maker or a decision until I get through all the skeptics. And people aren't conditioned to not answer the question about skeptics. Sometimes that skeptic is the decision maker, sometimes it's not. But that's a script. That's a one-sentence script. And if you say it right, you don't sound scripted. So I hope that answers your question around framework.
So two things, if I paraphrase, it's like exit criteria, so specific actions you need to do on each stages, and then the right answers, the right questions to ask.
Yeah,
basically.
the better
script can be a lot of more things, but
right.
The right answers to ask. Okay,
right. And for lack of a better phrase, what are the scripts to get that exit criteria? Right,
Scott. Maybe as a follow-up question, do you disagree with this? Or is there something else you would add? I'm just trying to create some chaos in the conversation. No, but what do you think?
It's usually quite easy to create chaos with us. But unfortunately, I found myself just sort of nodding my head and doing like, yeah, I agree. So I don't really.
I thought you were nodding off. Sorry.
No, that would have been better. No, I don't know. I don't know what to add to that, to be honest with you. At first I heard Richard start to say stuff about frameworks and scripts, and then he backed off of it, and about how you do it and stuff. So I can't disagree.
I think that resonates a lot as well. I think it's about tactical actions that you do in the day-to-day that get to check the boxes of these frameworks, so to speak, around this, around the whole sales cycle. I think that's the important point, right? A lot of frameworks are at the qualification stage, but oftentimes it spans across the whole deal. And that can be,
I just don't want people spending more time worrying about frameworks and criteria.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Than actually
just practicing how to say
managing a relationship and working on.
But is that the problem? The easy way here is to create, 4 fields in Salesforce for every letter of your framework and say, fill that up. And then thank you. We have a process in place.
That's definitely the easy way, and definitely what way too many people have optimized for in the last few years.
Yes, totally. Particularly engineering-minded people. I can't decide. This might be it's been a long time since I was this insulting to a guest, Scott. I used to do it a lot.
It's been a while. I don't know what Patrick's done to deserve this, but
I'm closing the camera and I'm just bruised. My emotions.
My mom's in town, so maybe I have some angst. So.
Yeah, we've also done a lot of episodes this week, so maybe the anger is building.
Yeah, so
it's only
Patrick,
Wednesday.
Let everybody know the best way to get in touch with you. Maybe you'll give out your email address or your cell phone or something like that, like one of our sponsors. If not, what's the best way to get a hold of you and learn more about Pod?
Listen, reach out on LinkedIn, Patrick Monnot. Send me an email, patrick@workwithpod.com. I'm not going to give you my cell number because there's a lot of spam coming up there, and I'm trying to work it.
Got boundaries.
But yeah, exactly. But other than that, like I mentioned earlier, our website, workwithpod.com, to kind of book a demo with our team or talk to us or see how the product can help the reps in your team to close deals faster. That's what we're all about. Day in and day out conversation with amazing sales leaders trying to get their team to all be A players.
So Patrick, just so you know, I give out my cell phone on every podcast, every single thing I do. Nobody calls.
Nobody calls. Then I'll do it.
Because salespeople are afraid to call.
I mean, that's another problem. We brought a new business development lead into the company a few weeks ago, and that guy just picks up the phone, and I am amazed by his ability to do that. But yeah, listen, if you want to give me a call, if you want to give me a call to give me shit, then don't call me. But if you're, a salesperson looking to talk about cool things in sales and pipeline management, +1 415 821 9612. Always available.
Yeah, up for the challenge.
Right.
Well done.
Listen, you're not going to scare me off with some consultant questions. And
right.
Thank you for the time, guys. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
Love this,
Appreciate
Patrick.
you spending time
awesome.
with us, man. Good fun, good episode. Best of luck.
Enjoy Costa Rica.
Stay in touch.
Thanks. Thanks for putting up with Scott's attitude today. We appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll see everybody next time on the Surf and Sales podcast.